Hi, everyone. It's 10 o'clock and time to get started. I'm Nancy Langton, Associate Dean of Accreditation and Strategic Initiatives at the Lewis College of Business, Brad D. Smith Schools of Business at Marshall University. I'm excited to be with you today. Welcome to the Herd Insights Small Business Webinar Series. We thank you for taking the time to attend this event. It's part of a webinar series given by Lewis College of Business faculty and local business professionals. The series showcases the combined expertise of our best faculty and seasoned and knowledgeable practitioners from the business community in which we engage. The goal of the series is to help small businesses achieve success in a changing and dynamic business environment. Before we start the event today, I would like to introduce Interim Provost and former LCOB Dean, Avi Mukherjee, to say a few words about the college and its mission.
Thank you, Dr. Langton, and welcome everyone to this exciting event. We appreciate your interest in this Herd 2020 Insight Small Business Webinar Series. The mission of the Lewis College of Business and its Brad D. Smith Schools of Business is to promote economic development in the regional community and beyond. We do this by implementing our strategic priorities for external engagement and development, including lifelong programs, the Business Leadership Symposium, the Dean's Distinguished Speaker Series, and the CEO panels that many of you have attended. The college has several outreach centers, including the Center for Entrepreneurship and Business Innovation, or the I-Center, that helps small businesses innovate with a focus on design thinking techniques, the Transformative Sales and Service Excellence Center, that imparts state-of-the-art sales training and education, and the BB&T Center for Leadership that promotes consulting and research opportunities between students and the community. The college also cooperates with the Brad D. Smith Business Incubator to help promote entrepreneurship throughout the region. As the nation and the state start rebuilding businesses and economies coming out of the pandemic closures and lockdown, the Lewis College of Business is committed to supporting our local businesses, alumni, and other stakeholders in re-engaging, recharging, and redesigning their business models. Hence, we have developed this webinar series that will consist of thought-provoking presentations throughout the academic year and into the summer, approximately every 2 weeks. We hope that you enjoy today's webinar and take something out of it to use in your business and professional activities to make West and the surrounding area a better place for business and community engagement. Dr. Nancy Langton will now introduce today's speakers.
Thanks, Avi. Today's informative and engaging presentation is titled Learning in a Values-Based Organization. It's brought to you by Amanda Meadows and business professional Tom Minturn. Amanda is an instructor of accounting here in the College of Business. She specializes in managerial accounting and has 15 plus years of experience in public and private accounting and business ownership. Tom has more than 20 years experience with Chick-fil-A and 15 plus years as an owner-operator. He leads an organization of leaders. Amanda and Tom will explain what it takes to learn to lead, self-lead, and how to set expectations and hold others accountable. Please feel free to ask questions via the chat function throughout the presentation. Amanda and Tom will answer these questions at the end. I now turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you, Nancy and Dean Avi, for that introduction. And let me first start by thanking Tom for joining us. Tom is not only a leader in the community and within his business, but I've also seen how he leads his family and everything that he does. And so when we were thinking about presenting today, it was no question that Tom had something very valuable to share with our business community. So Tom, I appreciate you being on here. And also with an accounting background, we have seen kind of a resurgence of values-based leadership after the downfall of Enron, Tyco, WorldCom, some of the endless ethics and fraud cases that we've studied in accounting. We sometimes look at what we can do within accounting, or how we can meet some of the new standards like Sarbanes-Oxley. But management goes a step further and says, okay, not only how can we comply with that, but how do we change everything that we're doing? How do we change the way that we're leading and change our business from beginning to end? So Tom's going to start us out talking a little bit specifically about Chick-fil-A, his own mission, vision, and values, and how that can really tie in and spread to, relate to other businesses. So Tom, I'll let you go from there.
Thank you for this opportunity, Amanda and Marshall leadership staff. And so I'm looking forward to, let's talk to you about our mission, vision, and values. The mission, as you'll see, is creating raving fans for a lifetime, one guest at a time. And we're really focused on the raving fan aspect and what that looks like. And so, many people say, what is a raving fan? For us, we define it very simply. It's somebody who comes more often, someone who pays full price, and someone who tells others about us. And I tell the story. I was in a local coffee shop getting a coffee. I was in there. I love to read, so I was going to take about 45 minutes out of my busy day and read and get a cup of coffee. And literally within that 45 minutes, I had 3 people come up and tell me. One of them was hollering over top of everybody, saying, "Hey, your Chick-fil-A is the best restaurant in town." That's what I call a raving fan. But I was like, it's almost embarrassed because I'm like, all right, we weren't expecting that, but it's like, what a compliment. And that's part of our goal. We want people to be able to tell others about us. And because, everybody says, you only hear the negative, but if you do things so much in the positive, that you can begin to hear the positives. That's our raving fan. Somebody who comes more often, pays full price, and tells others about us, because you will not see us discount our product. One of the things that we're really focused on with Chick-fil-A is not discount. We either give it away for free because we know that's how good it is, or else you'll see us charging full price for it. Our mission, people oftentimes say, what's the difference between a mission and vision? A mission is what we do every day. That's our purpose. We want to make sure we're focused on that mission. And so, like I said, creating raving fans, and that for a lifetime. We want to make sure, we talk a lot about in our business, I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, but we talk about what it looks like where somebody comes and eats with us once a week for 10 years. And then, so if they come, then as their family grows or as their network grows, how many times, oftentimes they bring people in, what's the value of a guest coming? And then the one guest at a time. And we call them guests intentionally. And because we want them to feel like they're coming, like we're treating like a guest in our house. We want to make sure that explain that, because customers, they're coming expecting something and they're paying for it. We want people to feel like, hey, you're a guest in our house. And when you're focused on that aspect as a guest, it really, sometimes I've had friends or people I've gotten to know that say, come in and go, I'd pay anything. We don't even feel like we pay. We come in and I'm like, that's what we want. And that one guest at a time. How many of you have ever been to a place or been standing in line somewhere, and it's like you feel like they're going next, who's next? And it's like, wait a second, I'm still not even done. I'm still talking to you, and they're moving on beyond you. And so we really focus on making sure it's that one guest at a time. Focus on the one person in front of you, and really making sure that you're taking care of that one individual and making sure them feel as special as possible. Because we talk a lot about, it's about the guest experience. It's how you make them feel. And that's what will make them want to come back versus all the other things that are done that, especially in this busy as we are, as we talked about previously. So one of the things that we really talk about a lot with our mission is interesting. I was listening to a podcast not long ago, and they said, if you talk about customer service and you tell somebody from the ages of 16 to 25, they can tell you about the best time of customer service, that oftentimes they have never had what we would call great customer service. Because you can't just tell somebody to give you make sure you give the guest good customer service or good guest service, because if you tell them that, they do not know what that means. So you have to be very careful to define that. So our vision, where do we want to be at long term? What do we want to be said 10 years from now? What do we want to be said about us? And you see, our vision is becoming Charleston's most caring business. And we really think it has 3 pillars. And the first is making sure we care about our team. Our team goes first and foremost. A lot of times people say, the customer is always right, the guest is always right. But we don't focus on making sure we take care of our team. Our team is empowered to do what's right, then it really is able to impact our guests. And the guests would be the second people we would care for. And the third is the community. People are like, well, how do you differentiate the guests in the community? Well, the community comes from us. Like, we are sponsoring a statewide soccer tournament that we held here locally. That's one thing. Another thing is we had an unfortunate where we had a police officer that was shot here in Charleston within the past year. And so we were able to feed the police officers their meals for basically 3 days straight. So we were able to do that because we want to show that we are the most caring business in the community, to be able to make those things happen. Our values. What are the values? And we spell them out, and you'll see eventually. Like we talk our values. We want to make sure you have a heart to serve. But we talk about our values of what we do. This is what will impact you as an individual. And it's interesting. These are really good to be able. We use these at home. Oftentimes, I'm a dad and my daughters are 8 and 6. And so we talk about it almost every day when I drop them off for school. Hey, we do the expect the best. Hey, I expect the best in your attitude and your effort today. So when I get home, when we get home today, I'm going to ask you, did you do your best? So that's just one thing, but I'm going to go back up and we'll start. So the values, H is a hunger for wisdom. And I think it's, the hunger for wisdom, people are like, well, what's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? And I said, well, I think to have as much knowledge as you can have will enable you to make the best decisions, and to be able to make that decision, the correct decision, is where wisdom comes in. And so I think having that hunger for wisdom is really, really important. And when you think about people that you want to be part of your team, and you want people leading your business, you really want to have somebody who has that hunger for knowledge, a hunger for wisdom, be able to be the best that they can be, and to continue to have that growth and initiative and that drive to get more. You expect the best. We are all about the best. It's like, it's a really easy question. When we fall or we don't do what we need to do, I'm like, hey, is that your best? Did you do your best effort? And so it's a really easy question to ask, harder to answer, but an easy question to ask. A is accept responsibility. And oftentimes, I think we probably all worked on teams or played a sports team or participated in an event where people did not do their own or not hold their own. And so we really focus on accepting responsibility. I tell the story. We had a lady who worked with us who was 25 years old. And I said, you really make a lot of excuses. I was very honest with her. I said, and she goes, I'm 25 years old. Nobody's ever told me that. And I said, well, it's good. I'm like, we will help you with that. And so every time we'd ask her something, she would start to make an excuse, and we would say, hey, you're making an excuse or giving us a reason. And she would go, I was getting ready to make an excuse. And so helping them learn how to accept responsibility. Because here's the thing, as soon as you make an excuse, everybody in the whole organization already knows you're making excuses. And a lot of times people will not call you out on it. We say excuses are thinly wrapped lies, because everybody already knows. We know you're not being completely honest on why that couldn't happen. And so then R is respond with courage. And I think that means, I know what it means. It means to be bold. Make sure that you're making the correct decision. A lot of times people will think they're responding with courage, but they really are not confronting the situation, and they're not being honest, because oftentimes we know there's a situation going on. We know somebody is not pulling their own weight, or they're not going back up to taking responsibility, or doing their best, or the hunger for wisdom. If you tie all that in, it's easy for us. We talk a lot about having a culture of accountability. I mean, I've had people in their 40s say, nobody's ever told me that. Nobody ever told me that I shouldn't do that. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry that they never told you that. They must have been scared, or they just didn't want to hurt your feelings. And it's not that we are all about hurting feelings, but we want to keep people honest and help people be the best version of who God's created them to be. And so we're really going to focus on helping them be the best that they can be. And T is think others first. And that T is a really great foundation, because you cannot do these other things without thinking others first. And like I said earlier, with my daughters, we use that one all the time because when they get into a fight over something, like, hey, you put thinking others first, but we do it at work. It's really easy to say, hey, make sure you're thinking others first when you make that decision. And we really talk about thinking about the organization first. A lot of times you have people who do not think about the organization first. They feel like they need off at the worst time possible. It's like, is that the best decision for the organization, or is that the best decision for you personally? Which is it? And when you think about that, it's like, oh yeah, you're right. I need to be here to lead my organization or to be responsible for that. So you think about the mission, vision, and values and how those things come together. A lot of times people will say, I'm going to start a business, and I've coached other people and helped them, and I've in all different phases of their business. And I love to ask them, what's your mission, vision, and values? And I've scared some people who like, I've been in business for 3 years and never did that. What should I do now? I'm like, don't get scared. Let's just go backwards. Let's work our way into that. What are you doing today that you want as your mission? Where do you see yourself at 10 years from now? And then let's talk about the values. What are you living by? What are the non-negotiables, the things that you absolutely have to do to be able to get there? But as I say that, if you're 3 years in, 10 years in, these things are things that you can come back in and gain. But if you really are in the beginning of a startup, if you can put these on paper to really create that, it will help you with your hiring. It helps with your vision of where you're going and what you're looking for. These things I feel like are pretty much non-negotiable. So.
Tom, we've been focusing a lot through these Herd Insights webinar, how things have changed through COVID. And and many on this call know that I've owned, along with a couple of business partners, an edible arrangement for 7 years. So we decided this past summer for many reasons to sell that off, and successfully sold the business this past summer. So somewhat related to COVID and also for personal reasons, but we took a different path than you did. It's very exciting to see you now not only holding steady with your Southridge Chick-fil-A, but in the coming year, planning to open a second location in South Charleston. So congratulations on that. But can you share a little bit maybe how your mission, vision, and values have reinforced that, or have they had to change at all as you're making this big business move?
That's a great segue into, I'll say, multiple facets or multiple answers. So I feel like that. So first of all, I'll go back to, so with COVID, thank God, that's a Chick-fil-A. We were really focused on our mobile app, focused on our drive-through. We really had already worked towards that. So to close our dining room and to really keep some social distancing in the restaurant was easier than in some aspects, and we were able to keep things moving. We're very thankful that our brand and business is one that is trusted. So it's enabled us to continue to maintain, and honestly, we were looking to try to hire people. We're still looking to try to hire people, honestly. And so I say all that to say, we were able to maintain well, I feel like, and then getting ready for the second restaurant. We've been working towards that. So to allow COVID to come in and interrupt that, we were not going to let our mission, vision, and values go by the wayside. We're definitely going to continue our focus on those things and bringing a second restaurant to this to the Charleston area. And so we wanted to make sure, we lived those, and we're able to show, hopefully we'll be able to show in the second restaurant into the community. And especially, one of the things that I think is a challenge we'll be opening in August, September. We have to hire 125 people, which usually in my experience means we'll probably have to hire about over 200 to get 125 that will fit into our system of mission, vision, and values.
That's an amazing. We have Tom at the end. Maybe we can speak even more as to some hiring challenges that we've seen across all industries. But before we move to the next point, would you care to just kind of, how long does it take when you hire a new employee before you think they become fully synced or bought into your mission, vision, and values? I mean, I'm sure it probably doesn't happen day one. We're talking months, years. When do you see that?
It's a great question. I think a lot of it has to do with the individual themselves. Like a lot of people, just like with this, with everything, a lot of people say, hey, I come in, I want to do this, this, and this to get to this, this level. And I'm like, well, first of all, you need to adopt, we need to see you living out our mission, vision, and values. How long is that? That's our first thing. And we have some people that you can see they already probably have a lot of these things before we hire. And there's others that will, it's going to take a little while because they've not had these values taught to them. We had a guy just last week to say, hey, you know what? Your standards are too much. I'm tapping out. And so, and those kind of things happen. But it's better because they know what your mission, vision, and values are, so they can make the decision versus you having to make the decision for them. And there not being clarity. I feel like this provides a lot of clarity to say, hey, do I want to be a part of this, or do I not want to be a part? So I didn't answer that question probably, but it's all over the place, honestly. There's some people come up and get it at 6 months, some people get it at 6 weeks, and most people, once they are fully involved, like right now, I tell people we have 70 full-time, we have 30 to 40 part-time that are very stable, and then the other 35 are the ones that kind of a revolving door out of 145 team members. So.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think there probably is a standard question or a standard answer to that in any organization. I'm sure lots of the business leaders on this call would agree with that. Depending on the individual, they probably see growth at very different rates, and that probably also plays into who they decide to keep on their team and move up through leadership. So our next point is walking through the steps of leadership. You've already talked a little bit about how you go through that, but for those on the call, what order do you suggest they go through this, and how do you prioritize and rank if you're trying to improve your leadership? No matter if you've been in the business for one day, or you're thinking of getting into the business, or you've had your business for 50 years, what do you suggest they do to go through this leadership process?
Awesome. So we talk a lot about 4 steps in leadership, and it's interesting. The first is lead self. And oftentimes it's interesting that when I've had people come from other organizations, they come in and say, they tell us all this stuff, and we ask them about their discipline, and I say, tell me about an time whenever you've had to use your own self-discipline. And a lot of times they've not had to be resilient or had to lead themselves well. And it's interesting. One of the biggest principles I have as we get to know people, they're like, I'm struggling financially. And so we'll ask them questions, and it's like, tell me about your budget, tell me about, what you're doing financially. And it's interesting that it's like they struggle financially, and those financial struggles and lack of discipline financially, how fast they come into the organization as well. And so it's like, you have them in a position of, you put them in a position, it's like, they don't understand how to lead themselves to get themselves to, going back into our advice. They're not driven for that hunger for wisdom. They don't understand that discipline. And I think that, and we do a lot of things to help them learn to lead themselves but a lot of times this comes from the way they were raised, or it comes from the way they perceive life. And it's, a lot of times it comes to some entitlement. When people say, well, I think I deserve this. Well, you start asking really good questions and saying that, okay, why do you feel like you deserve this? And it's a lot of times it's like, well, it's because of some criteria that was given to them, not because of something that they earned, or it was something that was given to them, or maybe they did earn it in a previous time in life, but they have not earned it with us. And so to try to explain that, to get them to be able to grasp what leading themselves means, it's a hard concept. But once they get it, you'll really can start to see them grow and then learn how to not just lead self, but lead others. And we talk a lot about in our organization, we say lead self, lead others, or lead a shift, which is a certain time frame. And so to lead others, help them get to that next level, and then to lead the team is being the third. And that would be a larger group than just the small, like our shifts run from like 10:30 to 2. So you're leading a small group between 10:30 and 2. But then number 3, leading the team. That's leading everybody that works with you. And so you have basically it's a department that you are responsible for, and you're responsible for that no matter what. So it's like, okay, this is who you are. This is your baby. This is your team. You need to own that. But if you don't can't lead self, can't lead others, it's really, really hard to come in and learn how to lead the team. And then the organization, that's our executive team, which that's leading the whole organization from a different perspective. Like we have different departments. We have a chief financial officer, and then we have a chief operations officer. We have the operations leads, directors of operations, and then we have a human resource and training director, and then we have a marketing, sales, and brand growth person. And so all those different people, they lead the whole organization from their perspective. So, but you can't do any of those things unless you learn to lead self.
And Tom, this can definitely be a generational thing that I've seen through generations. Individuals that try to skip through this, especially they want to jump straight to leading a team or straight to the organization. What are some of the pitfalls of this, or do you have any personal stories where you've seen people try to jump too high too fast, and you really have to guide them through these 4 steps?
And I think it's very interesting. It's a great point, because I had one guy that worked with us, and he came in saying, hey, I just got a 4-year degree, and I feel like I should be making more than my dad does. And his dad had a 2-year associate's degree, but was making really good money as a vice president of a company. And I'm like, that doesn't work. Like you're comparing apples to oranges, and it just doesn't. You cannot. You're discounting your dad's experience, or you're mistaking because you have a 4-year degree versus the experience. And that's a fine line. I mean, we're not just because I'm speaking to Marshall, I'm all about education. Most of our goal is to have between 25 and 30% of our team either having degrees or working towards degrees. And we really accomplish that. Most of the people on our executive team have 4-year degrees. So people come in and go, I have a 4-year degree. I'm like, yes. So we have people on our dining room team have master's degrees. So, we feel like we want to hire smarter people and get out of the way and let them run with it. But going back to your point, yes, we do have people, who come in and they feel like that because they
Tom, I can't tell if you froze a little bit there, but.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
So we have, is that better?
I don't know if you froze or I froze. Sorry about that. But
okay.
Yeah, good. I'm going to move on to expectations here. And again, I think this is so important from a leadership perspective and from workforce, or even any team that you work on. We're speaking to a lot of people in the business community that have their own businesses or want to move within their business. So whether they are viewing these expectations and understanding them, or they're the ones setting them, how important is it to have clear expectations?
I agree. This is one of the, if you were asked my team anything that when I walk in the restaurant and if I see things are not going the way they should be, the first question that I'm going to ask is, hey, did y'all set expectations today with such and such, wherever I see chaos? And so expectations are such an important part. And what happens is if you set expectations, it eliminates a lot of tough conversations later. It also allows you to have those tough conversations later. So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios to walk through that. So if I say, hey, today we're going to do these things, and I say, hey, here's the expectations. Can you meet those? Yes. And then I make sure. So I've set them. I'm going to communicate them, and then I clarify. And I jokingly say, this came about because I was coaching a millennial, and of course, as I say that, I'm not. They say there's 2 organizations in the world that are ran by millennials alone. That's the military and Chick-fil-A. So I'm like, I'm not here to belittle anybody. I'm all about, we want all generations working for us. So make sure you're very clear on that. But so I had given this task to this young lady and said, so what are you doing? After I had given it to her, and she goes, I'm doing exactly what you told me to do. And I'm like, that's not what I had recommended, not what I had asked. So I said, hold on. I said, that's my fault. I communicated, but I didn't clarify. I didn't ask you to repeat it back. And so I said, let's go through this and walk through the process. And of course I said, okay, can I use this as an example in some things that I have done and made mistakes with? And so Now it's really about set the expectations. So the next time I said, hey, here's what we want you to do. I'm going to communicate it to you. I want to clarify. So I'm going to ask you to repeat it back, and then I'm going to hold you accountable. And so once they repeat it back, and I do this with my kids, I do this with team members. It's like, hey, tell them what we expect. We communicate, we clarify. And a lot of the first three are easy. Everybody says, oh, I can do the first three. And I've had people in leadership tell me for a long time, I just have problems holding people accountable. I've had problems having tough conversations. I'm like, it's way easier to have that tough conversation if you've already gotten them to verify and give the word that we're going to do this. And so then it's like, so for example, for us is, we're talking about something in our restaurant. And so I'm saying, we set the expectations, we communicate it. And then after we clarified it, then we go back and go, hey, didn't you tell me that you were going to do this? Yes, I said I would do this. Okay, well, but you're not, right? Correct. No, I'm not. Okay, so I'm going to make sure. So from this point forward, will you promise me you will do this? Yes. Okay, we already had this conversation once, correct? Yes. So, and it makes it really easy. It makes it a 15 to 20-second conversation. It's not where if you come in the middle of something, hey, you're supposed to be doing that. I mean, how many times people will make excuses? I forgot, or nobody told me. Well, you're supposed to do it, but they're right. We had not set the expectation within that day. And so we really make sure that, so before every shift and before we start work, if we're able to set those expectations and then walk through this process, it really makes it really so much easier on the back end to hold people accountable and to have those tough conversations.
Yeah, and what I have found through personal experience, if you set, communicate, and clarify, the employees that I've gained the most respect for are those that actually hold themselves accountable. It's amazing to see without you saying anything, if you just walk into the store, into your business, it's like they immediately confess, or they'll call you at home and say, hey, I know we're supposed to be doing this, but I messed up today. And, what do you want me to do? Or I love is they've already fixed it. They are, being held accountable. And like you, we hired several young individuals, high school, college age, and to see them mature and develop and to hold themselves accountable, those tended to be the people that I would give more responsibility to, and you see move up quickly, and those that you do want to train into leadership. So that holding accountable is very important, whether it is done externally or internally, I think, for some very mature individuals. All right, let's move on to leadership model. I love some of these acronyms that you come up with to help us memorize and use these. We've seen several different versions of this, but why don't you walk us through the leadership model that you have here?
Would love to. So I'll tell you the basics before we start this. So they took over 10,000 leadership models and went all over the place trying to search through this to figure out what Chick-fil-A wanted as a leadership model, and basically realized, it's just to serve others. And so when they came up with this, it was really, I felt like simple, but brilliant at the same time. And so we'll walk you through that. And you saw our heart model with the values. So we said, we want to have a heart to serve. And so we can do that. It really helps us connect that and also helps us grow as better leaders. So the leadership models, the S is to see and shape the future. And what does that mean? It means to have a vision, to know where you're going, because so many times, and I tell our team this all the time, we talk about 3 C's of communication: communicate with clarity to eliminate chaos. And especially during COVID, we've had to communicate multiple times, way more, and to be preventive, to make sure everybody was on the same page, because you didn't get to see everybody all the time, because first of all, you didn't see people because they had their mask on. Second of all, you didn't get to see them because you weren't working with them within a 6-foot distance for a long time. So you have to make sure you have to know where you're going. They're looking to you or us as a business leader to help them see and shape the future. Many people now, they just want a plan, and they want to have a plan for them. Like I have people come to me all the time and go, hey, what's my plan for my raises? I went to interview someplace else and they have a plan to be able to give me more money through this. And it's like, we have a plan, it's just not always quite as our leadership, we have a good plan with that, but some people, I'll say that's all they're focused on, is looking to how to get raises, how to make more money. And so to be able to figure that out and to lay all that out is one of the things we have to really focus on. E is engage and develop others. So important. And like Amanda said earlier, just as we lead teenagers and lead college students, be able to engage them and develop them. How many times do you look back and you remember those people that engaged and developed you and helped you become better and stronger? And the R is to reinvent continuously. That's the hard one. That's like somebody said, that's the tough. I went to Medlin, and I said that's really difficult for you to do, because oftentimes we have blind spots, and when somebody tells them to you, a lot of times, especially where you're at in the leadership structure, you don't want to hear them. People don't want to hear what they've done wrong. And it's not necessarily all things wrong, but it's just being better and being stronger, or whatever you need to do to make your business better. And value results in relationships. That's one of my favorite. It's really important for you as a leader, or for us as leaders, to make sure if you're not balanced, then you need to hire somebody who can help you maintain that balance. When I say that, most people can remember, man, I remember working for that person who's all results oriented. My first job, I worked with somebody who's very results oriented, and oh my goodness, I mean, everything, it was not a fun place to work. And then I had another manager who was a relationship person. Oh my goodness, we had so much fun, but we got nothing done. And I was more results oriented than they were. I'm like, hey, we got goals to get done. You have to come in and have fun. We got to get these goals accomplished. Man, I always say winning teams will have fun, but you got to win first before you can have fun. You can't just come in and everybody have a great time and nothing going on to be productive or efficient. And then embody the values. And so, and E, embody the values, that also talks about the actual values of heart, but the hunger for wisdom, expect the best, accept responsibility, respond with courage, and think others first. But also these, in the third model, you need to be able to embody those and live those and own those.
So, Tom, I love this model, and to those on the call, there are many models. This doesn't have to be the one you follow. I love the one that Chick-fil-A uses, but there are numerous models out there that you can search if you're looking to implement something in your business. But we've only got 3 or 4 minutes left here to leave time for questions, and I really wanted to get to this last slide that we have on 5 areas of self-leadership, because, like you said, this is where you have to start. If you can't lead yourself, it's very difficult for you to go out and try to lead others successfully. So if you'll take us through these 5 areas, I've used something very similar to this before, but just walk us through how to lead self in all 5 of these areas.
I think it's so important, and not only to have these 5 areas, but also take time to make sure you have a mission and a vision for your life, not just your business. And so, when I say that, what do you want to do every day to create what you want for your 10-year plan? And I like to ask, like, what do you want written on your tombstone? And here's the thing: if something happened today, not to sound morbid, would you be able to write that on would some of your friends write that on your tombstone? And hopefully you have a truth teller in your life, somebody who can help hold you accountable, that you can ask, say, hey, this is what I would want. What do you think people would say about me if something happened to me? And that's a tough thing. So the 5 aspects. The first is spiritual, making sure that you're focused on spiritual. For me, it's a foundation. And I think oftentimes it is a foundation, even for people who do not know where they're saying that spiritually, the people I've met are like, I'm searching for that aspect. And I think once they find that aspect, the other 4 things will be able to come into place a lot easier and a lot better. So the second is relational. What do you want for your relationships? Who do you want to make as friends? My wife, she jokes because I put her on there to make sure I have a date night with her once, at least supposed to be every other week. And she goes, I can't believe I'm on your list. And I said, well, the thing about it is if we didn't, we probably would never get our date nights like we'd like. So we probably resort to about once a month, but we'll still at least we're able to have date nights hard with young kids. The mental and the intellectual. What do you want to do to strive to make yourself better and wiser? What books are you reading? Who are you surrounding yourselves with? And then the 4th is financial. Have financial goals. What does that look like? And I usually use an example. There's the Harvard Business Study. They said they interviewed their graduates, and they said out of 100%, they said that they asked them how many had their goals written down, or said 3% had them written down, 13% had them in their head, and the other 84%, like basically, whatever will happen. They got back together 10 years later, And the 13% that had them in their head made twice the amount of the other 84% combined. The 3% made 10 times the amount of the other 97% combined. So what am I telling you? Write your goals down, put them on paper, make sure that you're able to accomplish this. Then the physical aspect. It's very important, and Chick-fil-A talks a lot about this. I feel like it's important. Fit to lead is what they call it. But make sure that you're, for me personally, I like to get out and run or work out just so that way, because it kind of breaks the stress out of, helps me be able to focus on that. So I think it's really important to make sure that there's some kind of plan to make sure that you're doing something physical to make sure that you can take care of all those things, because you want to be around a long time to be able to take care of all the other things in life.
Yeah, that's great, Tom. And I'll point out one final thing over to questions here. There are definitely seasons in life where you are hyper focused on maybe one of these five. Maybe you're getting an advanced degree and you're, or getting a new certification, mental, intellectual. Maybe you got some physical goals in any certain year. I think it's just important that we don't ever let any of them completely fall to the wayside, but it's okay to have seasons where you are focused more on one than the other. But Nancy, I'll turn it back over to you to see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Amanda and Tom, for an enthusiastic, informative, and insightful presentation today. It will help us all think more about how to lead and all the interesting facets about building a mission and vision for companies and personally. I'll now read some of the questions that were posted during the event and some that arrived before the event. So the first question is, how can you ensure the values defined by your organization work well in a culturally diverse workforce?
That is a great question. And I think a lot of it is for us is we actually have somebody on our staff that's a director of care and culture, and really focuses on that and just really emphasizes. So, here our team is not quite as diverse. I used to have a Chick-fil-A in Columbus, and I tell the story that we had people from 8 different countries working with us at one time. So we had a lot of diversity, and we were able to use these mission, vision, and values to be able to create that synergy. But all because we cared about them first. They like the old, I think it's John Maxwell, but he always says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so for us, making sure we're a caring organization is really able to impact that and create that culture, what we want to create.
And I'll just add that the values for most organizations span all cultures. They're things that are widely acceptable, like be kind, love, serve others. They're not things that are divisive. So I think as long as you are inclusive of all of those things, they're typically accepted and embraced by all cultures.
Great, thank you. Another question that comes from the audience is about, Amanda, you mentioned that you got out of your one business. So is there something particular that you learned from that? They always say you learned from your failures. Not saying that that was a failure, but is there anything in particular you learned from that might help you the next time around if you plan to open another business?
Nancy, only if we had another hour. I love that you're pointing out failures. In a lot of ways, I do view that as a personal failure. But at the time, we still got this up here on the screen, these 5 areas of self-leadership. There were other things that I wanted to focus on. And it was becoming a little overwhelming during COVID to balance all of that. So I decided that was one thing that, hey, this is, a business that's sellable. It's something that we can cut off. And oh my goodness, learned so much through that. And one of the things was I didn't have the time to set up this leadership model that Tom has laid out. I would love to set it up from beginning to end and be working in the business, but instead I was more of an investor that was always overseeing a manager. So much to learn. One of my favorite books too is Failing Forward. So when you mention that failing, yeah, you can learn a lot more from failure than success. And that 7 years in business was invaluable. And if I were to do it again, it would be to do something that I can put more effort into and not just let someone else take care of for me.
Great, and thanks. And yeah, 7 years in a business to me is a great success. To me, it would be a great success. So, but thank you for answering that. So you mentioned a book of yours, Amanda. To the both of you, are there any other books on leadership or related to your topic today that you would recommend?
I'll say I definitely I'll go with my top 3 books on and that is the E-Myth Revisited. I think that's huge. By Michael Gerber. That's I'll say this really talks about, and I'm gonna give Amanda's quote, but it's like working in the business and working on the business, what that looks like. It differentiates that very well. The other is Entre Leadership, and honestly, I think that's one of the best books of knowing when to transition out of your, like, 'cause a lot of times people are starting a small business and they're trying to do their day job and the small business. And I think it's really huge to have a timeliness of when to transition out and when to keep doing what you're doing, burning the candle at both ends. I think that's good. And the other one is Wooden on Leadership, and that's by John Wooden, as talks about his pyramid of success. And I think that's huge. It's 15 different principles that are just very timely, and they're timely, but I think they will hold up over time as well. So
I'm terrible with remembering authors and titles, but a couple more. It's been a while since I've read, but always like Good to Great and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I know most have read, but more so than books, what have been most valuable through my career and personal life are mentors, those people that you have relationships with. I've learned far more from having relationships with people that are willing to pour into my life and into my development, that have done far more good than anything I could read. And I'm sure Tom would probably agree with that.
Great.
I do agree. I think it's important. And I had a professor that always told me, you are who you are because the books you read, the people you surround yourself with, and the places you travel. And I think it's one of the most true statements I've ever heard. So
Thanks. Okay, another question is, I really struggle with a lack of charisma that many leaders have to make people naturally want to follow them. Any suggestions?
I think that's awesome. And I'm probably not the most charismatic leader myself. And so I feel like it's very important to know where the leaders, you know what your leadership structure is. I actually have people who I would say are more the face of the business than I am. So they're in the dining room every day. They're in the drive-thru every day. They're the ones that they're just the face of the business, I think, but having a system behind it. I'm barely an extrovert, just for myself personally. And so because of that, I'm not the one that's going to be jumping on the tables. And ironically enough, I coach new Chick-fil-A owners, and I've been doing it for about 10 years. And so as I coach a new owner, some of these people, I'm like, oh my goodness, I would never have a chance against them because of how much they're so charismatic, their personality. Like, I'm like, people will definitely want to work for them because they have so much charisma. So I feel like it's just having a great system and having great people and being confident in yourself that you don't have to be the one out in front and have to be making all the decisions. I think that self-confidence versus, so you have to be confident in yourself. And it all goes back to self-leadership, so.
Yeah, and I'll say, Nancy, I'm probably one of those people. I don't know too many people that would maybe describe me as having a lot of charisma, and I am more of an introvert. So I think for me, just always being genuine and always being honest truly comes across. I think people can relate to that for maybe what I'm lacking in other areas. It's just always being upfront and genuine with them.
Great. Thank you. All right, here's another question. I'm thinking about starting a new business. This has helped me see that I may not be starting in the right place. What are some of the most important things to define as I get started?
Tom, if you want, I'll take that one first. Whether you're providing a service or a product, I think we always try to talk about, what it is that you're providing, what is it that the market needs. And your mission, vision, and values are a great place to start. I think you have to know how you're going to do it, who it is that you're serving, how you're going to serve them, and how you're going to differentiate yourself. I think there's competition everywhere now. So in your mission and vision and values, again, stay true to who you are as an individual, and get a team behind you that can support that. But having those written mission, vision, and values is probably a great place to start.
I think it's a great point, Amanda. I think that one of the keys with that is in having them written is just really making sure that they're able to focus on those things. And I say this tongue in cheek because it's like, I think it's important to have them before you start, but sometimes these things are going to evolve as your business grows, but you need to be aware of those to make sure that you're focused on them. And I tell the story is like, we had a young guy that worked for us, and I saw him, and I was like, dude, tonight's your graduation from high school. And he goes, yeah, I know. He said, but I don't feel like that's a family. I feel that this is my family at work. And I really wanted to be here tonight versus my graduation from high school. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, it put our level of responsibility a whole nother level, but it made me realize people want to be a part of something that's successful, and they want to know what they're a part of. And so as you look at your mission, vision, and values, people want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of something that's contagious and something that it's like that they can be a part of, because a lot of times people haven't been part of a team that's so it works so well together. So
Great. Okay, we have another question about kind of something related, Tom, to what you were saying about working in other places where you didn't feel like you were a fit. If you're being hired in as a manager, or you're taking over a business, how could you go about changing the culture if it wasn't one that you kind of fit in with?
that's a great question. It's the irony of it. I have people that tell me, we have people like who they'll tell me that, they don't feel like our culture is meeting all the expectations that they expected. And so a lot of times they tap out. I'm like, wait, don't leave. We'd rather have you as part of our team. Like stay on our team and help us change this. And so I go say that, but I'll go backwards to like Central Philly answering your question. And that is, when I think about it, is, making sure that even from the get-go, a lot of times people call me and ask me, say, hey, they'll ask or they'll go through the process. I'm like, hey, how do you know you want to be a part of Chick-fil-A? Well, I don't. I said, well, let's talk through this. You can also Google it and find out a lot about us. And a lot of times I tell people, you have to interview us as much as we're interviewing you. And I think a lot of times people get in and they realize that they cannot change the culture like they think they can. And sometimes that they cannot, they'll never be able to change it, good or bad. But a lot of times, they need to be able to get on board with whoever is responsible and say, hey, let's talk through this. Let's make sure our mission, vision, and values all match up.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep myself muted because we have a little bit of an echo and we're all unmuted. Another question from the audience is, part of a values-based leadership model should also subsume and insist on organizational civility and lack of tolerance for any degree of toxicity. How do you ensure civility and accountability for toxic behavior in your organization? How should you message such a value?
That's a great question. We really try to focus on that from day one when we do our orientation, to say, hey, these are things that are non-negotiables. We're not going to put up with this. We'll put up with, these are the things that we look for. And we really try to make sure that we're very focused on that aspect. And honestly, like, it's the sad part is the toxicity, that a lot of times people will come to us and they'll make the comments like, hey, I think this is toxic over here. And honestly, the sad part is a lot of times they're the ones creating the toxic problems. And so having to help them navigate through that and say, hey, you understand like what you've done, because we'd say we don't want any gossip. We don't want rumors. And we really focus on when I find out somebody says, hey, such and such about this. Well, what did they say when you said something to them? That goes back to our value, respond with courage. Oh, I didn't say anything to them. I'm like, well, did you tell anybody else? Well, yeah, I told a couple other people. They can't solve that problem. Only person that can solve that problem is the person that's there. That's it. So you need to go to that one person. And so we have to really teach that a lot to be able to go to help them with that problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll just add that there has to be zero tolerance, and you have to snip it out immediately. If you hear rumors of something bubbling up, take care of it immediately. Don't say, I'll wait till it gets to this level. I'll see if it works itself out. I've always found it better to intervene and say, this isn't acceptable. You've got one warning and that's it. We're going to put an end to it. So it's got to be kind of that zero tolerance, and be aware of what's going on in social media and outside of work, not just what happens in your workplace. That's become a very big thing. But yeah, as soon as you're made aware of it, you've got to handle it.
Great. Excellent.
That's a great point. Yeah. As soon as you know about it, you're responsible for it. And so we do have zero tolerance. So I hope I didn't communicate that we tolerate it. We do not tolerate anything like that at all. So.
Okay. And looks like we have time for one more question. This last slide you have up on the areas of self-leadership. And Amanda, you talked about how sometimes you have a season where you can only focus on, you put a heavier focus on one of them. Can either of you offer any tools that you use for self-improvement to help in that area of personal leadership?
Right now in this season of my life, I will just say I live and die by a calendar. We talk about having things written down. You will see this phone glued to my hand every second of every day. It is synced to my husband's calendar. It has my kids' activities. It has everything for Marshall, every board that I serve on. It has to be in one place. My goodness, and time management is still something that I struggle with, but I have started in the last few years, and I feel like the phone is high tech for me. Also, I could pull up all the Post-it notes on the bottom of my laptop right now. I live and die by written calendar and Post-it notes. And I hate to say, if one of those things fell apart, my life might fall apart right now. But for me too, it's always spiritual has to come first. If you don't have that foundation, and this could work for any religion, even for atheists, whatever it is that you believe in, I think you better believe in it wholeheartedly. And then I find that spills over into every area of my life. So for me, even though there are seasons where some are heavier than others, you'll find that spiritual is always at the root of it.
I agree. And I'm going to talk, she did a great job talking about the personal side. I'm going to talk about the business perspective. And I have a friend that has a very successful coaching business with, 250 coaches on his team. And I asked him a couple of questions, and he said, the reason if I had to start my business all over again, he said, I do one thing, and that's hire a good administrative assistant. He goes, and most people heard me say administrative assistant. I didn't say administrative assistant. I said a good administrative assistant, because a good administrative assistant will help multiply his time. And I have a buddy who's a vice president of sales for a Fortune 200 company. And he said he was negotiating him bringing himself on that. And he said, I need 2 admins. And they're like, whoa, you can't have 2 admins. The CEO doesn't have 2 admins. He goes, I'm going to bring in $40 million a year in sales, and I'm going to pay 2 people $40,000, or I can pay one person $40,000, probably bring in $15 million. He said, so think about your return on investment: $40 million for $80,000, or $15 million for $40,000. So he said, I think so. Anyway, he said, you got your choice. You can either hire me or I'll go someplace else. So anyway, that's my side. You need a good admin.
Great. Thank you, Tom and Amanda. This has been a really great presentation today. And we're now at the time for wrap up for the Herd Insight Small Business webinar. Our next presentation is October 25th. Look for your registration email for the next event to arrive in the next few days. We appreciate your participation today, and we especially appreciate Amanda and Tom. And remember, we are Marshall.